All right, good morning, everybody. We're here for another guest speaker, and we have Shazzy, and I believe it's pronounced Angulo. Is it
Mhm.
correct?
Yeah.
Shazzy's here from WildBrain, and she's been at WildBrain Animation for 3 years now, where she's helped develop their specific Unreal Engine pipeline. And starting with her first show in Unreal in 2020, WildBrain has now created over 11 different shows using Unreal Engine. She's developed this Unreal Engine workflow and implemented best practices and trained production supervisors and artists at WildBrain. In addition to her role at WildBrain, she works on her own creation, Mitzi Makes It. It's an animated educational property that inspires girls to get into STEAM through a series of YouTube videos, children's books rendered out in Unreal, and free worksheets. So, Shazzy, really nice to see you here. Um, the floor is yours. You should have hosting control and everything so if you need to share something, it's good to go.
Well, good morning. Hi, everybody. Let me get this shared. And okay, we're good. We see
We're
Unreal.
good. We see you.
All right. So a little bit about what I'm going to go through is kind of 90% of actually my Mitzi property. So this is Mitzi. She's a pink little robot. I'm going to kind of take you through what maybe an indie creator kind of my workflow for making my videos and how I kind of work on stuff. And at the end, I'm going to jump to a WildBrain property and show you kind of more in the space of like, okay, you're at a studio, there's hundreds of people working one Unreal project and kind of what that looks like. And you can see some of the similarities and differences between that. So what I'm going to show you here is very much specific to kind of my goals and my approaches. I think when people work in animation, you have different goals, right? For me, I'm making something really for preschoolers. I'm very scrappy and resourceful. I come from a computer science background, so I do not know how to model. I do not know how to animate. There's a lot of things there that would take me a really long time to do. And my goal with Mitzi is to try to make kind of short YouTube videos as fast as possible and then release lesson plans that go with those and stuff that's kind of used in the classroom. So my approach is going to be maybe very different than someone who's super into like cinematography and that. So besides my characters, so I have Mitzi and I have about 6 other characters. Everything else in her kind of workshop here is actually from the marketplace. I haven't modeled a single thing. So from the Epic Marketplace, Adobe Stock, other things out there, I will try to, I mean, if it's free, like that's even better. But I essentially kind of when I come up with ideas for my videos, I actually try to see what I can find first and I kind of write to that so I know that I have the items that I need. So everything here has been from the marketplace. And then usually I will also try to, I have my own little material pack, but the Twinmotion materials, big fan of that. Hardwood floor, some, stucco on the wall, stuff like that. Just again, quickly building environments as fast as possible. And then my next approach going into animation is I actually have my character set up to work with the live link face. So she has the 50 some blend shapes that, Apple's put out for the AR kit. So I have that set up inside of a animation blueprint. And let me just open my live link app. So usually what I do is kind of, and I'm sure through screen share and stuff like that, things are going to be a lot slower, but I have my phone here and you can see that I'm driving her. So usually what I do is I'll kind of have an idea for a video. It's usually going to be like back to school, Earth Day, like one of those things. I'll kind of go find all the different assets. I'll kind of write a generic little script with, honestly, it's like sticky notes that I stick on my iPhone. And then I will just go through and at least record the head part. I don't have a motion capture suit. I don't have any of that. So I'll go into the body in a little bit. But what I do is I will pop open tape recorder. I will add Mitzi to here. And then usually I will add my microphone as well, so I can record both my audio and face in there. I'm going to quit my live link just so it's not slowing me down. So actually we'll just record a little thing and see what happens. Okay, so
Performance looks pretty solid, Shazzy. So
okay, good. So blah, 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 record, talk, all that jazz. And then we'll hit stop. And usually I'll do just like a quick review of it, just to make sure that it's all okay. Hide the original. We have some audio there. I'm like, great, looks happy. Again, from a very scrappy perspective, I really just try to do one and move on to the next one. I know people who are going to be, much more on the side of like caring about performance and all of that. Like you could probably spend a lot longer doing this. But my running joke to myself is my demographic is eating their boogers. I think I can have some forgiveness if things aren't perfect. It's more of like, let me try to get this out on the weekend. And I work full time. So this is like my nights and weekends. So it's a very short amount of time to try to make something and get it out. So we have a little clip here. Then usually what I'll do is I will unlock it. I will quickly like throw in a camera and to, let me just hide her again. Try to just start setting up like what I want kind of my shot to look like. And now kind of going into the body part of it. So I have the head rotation set up inside of the animation blueprint. So let me just show you that. I have this combo one. And originally when I first started, I had her in the T pose and it was like driving me crazy that, well, if I just put an idle on her, then maybe I can reuse that for like a lot of my shots and I don't have to worry about it. So inside the animation blueprint is where I set up kind of my live link. So you can do your head rotations here, and then you pretty much plug it into what bones you want to be modifying. So for like the neck and the head, that's what these two are doing. And then in here, I'm layering it with an idle for the rest of her body. Now for me, for the body animations, I hired someone to make a little animation library for the bodies because it would take me way too long to animate something. So I have kind of a little set here of like different kind of emotes, idles, grabs, things like that. Like just enough of like, okay, can I kind of stitch these together and make most of what I need? So that's what's going on the body part. Would love a mocap suit, just not there yet. So I have this library and I'll kind of then piece together the head and the body. One very helpful pointer in case anyone's trying to set up LiveLink, if your phone is not connecting to your computer, check your firewall settings and make sure you're like allowing that connection to come through. Every time usually I've upgraded engines, it's actually like defaulted to off. So make sure if you're upgrading engines, you also go and turn that back on. Just how to do that this week. So let me go back to the combo. Okay, so in here I just have the idle. So at least when I'm recording, she just has like an idle cycle and the face talking. I can kind of swap these out with different ones if I wanted to, and then like recompile it and do my face on there. That was my initial approach of like, oh, that's a great way to combine like her head and her body for all the different takes. And then very quickly I was like, oh, that's going to be really painful to either be making a bunch of these or be switching these before every take. There has to be kind of like a better way to do this. And again, I'm really trying also not to leave the engine. I'm sure if you exported FBXs and you took it into another DCC that you're comfortable with, you could probably put those together, clean up the animation and make it look a lot better. Again, not in my skill set to go to another application and do that. So I'm like, okay, how can I kind of have the flexibility of grabbing whatever take I want for the head and whatever body I want and just putting that together in the sequencer. So what I ended up doing was making another animation blueprint. And this one, essentially, I just made two different slots and I'm blending them together. And so how this works is, let me bring this one next to her. So how this one works is then I'll go into the track that actually has the recorded animation and I'll add this sequence-based one. and I will add the like body animation that I'm wanting. I think I have. So we'll put this dancing one, extend that out so you can see. Right now it's kind of just like on her head. And that is because if you right click and go to properties and they have these slot names, you can kind of assign. So what in that animation blueprint, you can assign that slot to specific like joints. So I've kind of split it up to the head and the body. So right now it's only the default is to apply it to the head. And then if we add, now we're going to add the animation from this clip, which has like me talking. And when you have the two together, you can see it's kind of trying to like merge them. So she's like kind of sleepy and talking. And if we switch this though to the head slot, you can see now, and I know the naming might be a little backwards to some of you, the dancing is going to happen on the neck down. And then what I just recorded through the take recorder is going to be on the head up. And let me put my camera so it's not out of focus. So this is like a really fast way for me to kind of take the head animation and then play with different body animation without having to mess with an animation blueprint. I can also kind of blend between different ones, which just makes it so much easier. Again, have to just change that head slot, but essentially you could make a variety of different slots for different parts if you really wanted to. So you can see now, like I can have what I recorded and have some body animation on there. And it's a lot faster for me to work this way to make my videos. And then I do have a kind of simple control rig for her. So again, if there's something again that's just off on the animation that's not quite working, I can layer that on top and, you know, move an arm, or if she needs to be holding something, I'll kind of like close her fingers, just little things like that to make it a little better without having to leave the engine. So I'll kind of set this up and then still organize them in different shots. Instead of, I won't do it in one, I'll always have just one camera for one shot. I also like to then kind of make a kind of like a sequence-based one. So I will usually kind of put all my different shots in here so I can kind of look through all the different ones. These aren't going to be linked to anything, but just so you can see. Put down here. So you could do, you know, you can kind of have them go through here so you can see kind of, hey, this is roughly what it's going to look like before you render it all out, right? You can kind of help trim some stuff so you're not rendering out extra frames. You can also, again, if you don't have like a super tight story, maybe you're just doing kind of a few different clips and stuff, this is also a nice way to kind of maybe like play with the order to see like, oh, that, you know, do I want to move this first, then move this over here? Does that play better? So I kind of do like a rough edit pass in here first. I'm not super concerned getting it like down to the exact frame, but just enough of like, okay, if I need to rename my shots when I'm rendering them out, I kind of have the rough order, making sure that it's nothing weird's happening with the camera between two shots, like anything that's distracting, they kind of hook up. So I don't have to wait for everything to render, put it in a different application, and then realize it doesn't go. So I usually like to kind of have this approach so I can organize stuff around and just see how it's playing. So after I have that set up, happy with the body, if there's other props in there, those I'll just kind of keyframe an engine. If there's other characters in there, so all the characters that I have are actually set up the same way with the same skeleton, which is also another optimization. So I can have an animation library made and it can apply to all of the characters all at once, which is really nice. Yeah, so obviously some stuff like around the dress and things like that might be a little bit different, but for the main animation, you can see that they have the same kind of similar libraries between them.
Shazzy, we got
Yeah.
2 questions that are coming in real quick.
Sure.
What's the name of your YouTube channel?
Mitzi Makes It.
Okay. And a lot of folks were like really interested in your animation blueprint for separating things up into slots. They want to know if you can just show that a little bit more.
Yes.
This is something that you'll get some introduction to within the fellowship folks. So this technique is pretty essential, especially if you're trying to do something like this, where you have a pre-programmed set of actions and different body motions that you need to manipulate. Creating these works really, really well for that. Instead of having to rely specifically on a control rig, you can just throw an animation onto a body part. But go ahead, Shazzy.
Yeah, so I will just click on each section, but it's just essentially I have a head slot and a default one. So default is what comes in the engine already. So whatever you assign to here. And then this node here. And so you can have that it's split out by whatever bone that you want. If you want a different one in there, then you can put, neck or torso or however you want to split it up. So that's
fantastic. Folks, just so that you know, don't want to interject too much. This particular technique, we actually do and will cover something similar to this in Liz's class when she gives, which will be soon. And you'll learn how to do this and break things apart and blend using a layer blend node. So hang in there. You'll get you'll get the knowledge, I promise. One last question that's coming in. Do you let the body mocap drive the head movement, or do you enable the head movement tracking through the LiveLink app? Or do you use both approaches? Which do you think works best for your workflow?
So I have the LiveLink head rotation coming through. So
oh my. The scourge of crashes. It's all right. Don't worry about it.
I can still answer the question though. I will do it through the LiveLink. And in the animation blueprint, you can kind of add like a multiply if you want to kind of slow down the speed. I think the default was like the values that come in, you have to add an additional multiply to map it. And I think also it depends how you work. If I'm looking at myself on screen, so if I'm doing a zoom like this, I will switch the head so it's matching what I'm doing, because it'll be jarring for me if my head's going this way and then Mitzi's going the other way. But if you're just filming it, then you can switch it. So I do that often depending on like what I'm doing, if I'm recording for myself or if I'm doing a screen share, because I know some people will be like, well, your head's going that way. Why is she going that way? It's like, well, the selfie camera and all that stuff, it's the same way, but it can be confusing for some people. So I do that. If there's cases though, where I'm doing a scene and I like the animation I have is like, maybe like I have like some crying ones where her head's looking down, that then I can just, I don't have to use that special animation blueprint where things are split up, because I might want the head rotation of me looking down, and maybe I didn't film myself looking down really when I was doing it. So it kind of just depends. In the end, I'll decide if I want my head and body split, then I'll use that special like slot blueprint. If not, then I'll just, apply it. I have a different one where it's not at the head, it's just the whole body. So it kind of just depends what you want to do.
So this brings up a question for me to you. And when you're delivering these live performances, do you have crashes? How do you deal with them? Do you have a backup plan when you're broadcasting live? What happens?
So I mean, if I'm just recording myself, it's a little easier, but I would say the more annoying thing when you're recording is like the dogs start barking or the mailman shows up. And there's so many takes of me, like, and I have this cartoon voice too, that's like, hi there. And then it's like, are you freaking serious? Like in the middle of the recording that you hear me. The funny part is like you see my face. So it's like her little eyebrows are like this. And it's almost like I want to just do a whole reel of bloopers because it's so
You
funny to
definitely should.
see that. Um, for doing it live with demos and stuff too, like again, just like how you kind of pick up on it, especially if I'm with a teacher, like they'll totally swing it and be like, oh, Miss Shazzy needs to go fix something really quick, or class, let's
Sure.
get some questions, or like everyone's pretty, especially with like the pandemic, everyone's gotten pretty good of like having some graces with all of that. And I'll always like, do something cheeky of like, being an engineer, there's a lot of troubleshooting and problem solving, and this is a great opportunity and, learning and, things happen that are out of your control. Like, try to like make some kid lesson of like, it's
I love the
okay.
fact that you're teaching computer engineering skills to kindergarten. Awesome. All right, you're back. So please continue.
Okay, I'm gonna go to unlit just for a little second and give my computer some breathing room. I am not letting me pan around. See if it's letting me. Okay, I can still go my content browser. Come on. Okay. So I was back. Let me go back to. Come on. I'll get there in a second. Let's see.
This never happens to me ever. So I don't know what's going on.
It's usually after a crash, then it takes like a little bit to
flush those caches, get the cobwebs out, try again. You're handling it like a champ, though. Don't worry.
I'm gonna open up another one in the background just to see. Maybe I should update my driver. Maybe that's the problem. Everybody update your driver if it tells you to.
Well, while we're waiting for this to load, there is a question. How does it look like? Let's see here. Question for Shazzy. How does it look like her TV show pitch package? In the case that there is one, I think the question that they're trying to ask is, for your pitch package, did you show exactly this, or did you have something a little more primitive for the pitch? I mean, this is all being done by you, and it's all being resourced by you. So you really didn't pitch this to anybody else, correct?
No.
Okay.
So this is like everything I've done. It's been like 3 years now that I've worked on this. So there's other stuff potentially happening. But this is kind of everything that you see like online and everything I've done myself. I think because I've kind of started it, I think maybe the question might be like, if you have an idea that you want to do as a pitch and you haven't made anything, like, do you do stuff in Engine or present it that way? I think there's been some interesting things that I've gone through having this be an Engine already, which I know for some people who are maybe like on the development team and things like that aren't used to working with things like that. I think it's actually like a really interesting approach to be able to take your idea and, sometimes usually when you pitch things, you have like 2D drawings of it, right? Or you have references of like, oh, I want it to feel like this. But I think there's so much out there on the Epic Marketplace, Bridge, you can quickly, do different effects in Engine that I think you could really put together a feel of what your show would want to be or an idea that you have in Engine very quickly. And I feel like that just brings so much more of like, you instantly know how it feels, right? Like I think seeing a 2D version of Mitzi, like, oh, it's bright colors, like probably seen something a lot, but seeing like, oh, it kind of feels, I mean, it looks like my office, but it's like, it kind of feels like real life, right? The proportions are there, She's actually smaller compared to her workshop, so it feels like an adult's workshop. There's hardwood floors, there's actual like, you know, painted walls. Like it has kind of those real life elements. It's like you're shopping at IKEA in the kids department kind of, is the feel that you get. So I think like if you have an idea, and I think if you can bring it into Engine, I think that just helps it so much more. Like people, it's not left to the imagination of like what it's supposed to be, right? Like if you saw a 2D version, you're like, oh, it's going to be this super stylized show. Everything's going to have these fun shapes. Like, you know, there's so much you can interpret there. So I think if you can bring your own ideas into there and really kind of show what you want to do, especially like basic lighting, like you can throw some effects in there. Like it just gives off so much more of like a feeling, I think.
Yeah. You know, there was a suggestion out there that for helping with the stability of the engine, I don't know what your scalability settings are at. You know, maybe if they're set on Epic or something like that, maybe lower those down, and perhaps it might help it be a little.
We're gonna do that one when I show you the WildBrain project.
Okay.
Not Epic. We'll go to high. What's this other one? All right. Fingers crossed.
Hit it.
I just like hear my computer like humming slowly at me in the background.
It's groaning. Oh my gosh. What was your animation library that you created? Did you do this all in mocap, or did you keyframe it, or did you use some other tool? This was a question that was
I hired someone to make it for me. Like I said, my skills aren't there. I wish I could animate quickly. So I have these ones that are like really kind of custom to her. Now the other approach that I do, because again, like taking too long. The mocap libraries on the marketplace, that's another approach that I'll do. Again, like there's some things that are a lot harder with that because she's so small and her proportions aren't very human. So retargeting stuff onto her isn't the easiest. I have a few actually that I'll show you. So this is like a ninja backflip, right? Like her head is just like massive. But again, for me, it was like, okay, if I bring this into the sequencer and maybe I keyframe her going up and things like that, and it's a fast shot, like kids aren't really gonna like care too much about that. So, and then other things that I do also is like, you know, there's the YouTube channel and there's that, and then there's like, okay, well, you also have to make stuff for all the social medias and all that. So usually I'll do kind of like, again, like what's a quick way to put content out is I can grab a lot of like fun poses from those. So sometimes I'll put all the characters and they're not actually animated, but they're in a pose. And then I'll do stuff with the camera because that's, again, a lot faster to do something with the camera, you know, throw some music on there. You can do whatever edits you need like in the apps. So it's just, again, trying to find like what works best. Like this flossing one was actually retargeted pretty well.
That's good.
And then I'll just, again, just add the blend shapes here and just like put some quick keys so she has a smile. If I don't want to like be animating her face, if I want to just like throw this around, then it's kind of posed out. So it's a mix. I've also done some of the stuff with Move AI when that came out with like the 2 iPhones and recording myself. And again, for kind of like, if I could remember to like hold my body to kind of like match her proportions, again, it works a lot better. But trying to, again, not have to edit too much to make things work. Again, she's so small. So if your character's more human-like, awesome. Like I would totally like browse the marketplace, grab mocap stuff from there. If you have like, there's a lot of awesome stuff there that helps you get really far. And then again, if you have a control rig for it, you can edit just on top of that as a starting point. So if you don't feel strong animating every frame, you can kind of bake those out and actually like see all the keys and then go in there and make tweaks. Or that's also just a helpful like learning way, especially for me. Like I know animators can look at a person like, oh, their fingers moving and their eyebrow went up and all this, but to me, it's like, you know, when I bake out all those keys, I can see, oh, they moved this joint, and that makes that, like, it's a learning tool too, to kind of see how that's all done, which is really helpful as well.
It's almost like you're acting as a producer director with Unreal than an animator. You're like putting
Yeah.
it into place, and yeah, it works great. So please continue. We have more questions, but I want you to make sure that you get through everything.
Yes. Well, let's see if it crashes again, then I'll switch to the WildBrain project. But we were here with, oh, let me put her back out.
And currently on the clock, we have 20 minutes. So just so you know, to time yourself.
Okay. So last we left here, slots are combined, everything, happy with this. I was kind of talking about, you can kind of make, like, if this is your shot, then you can kind of make a sequence-based one, link all your shots, review it, kind of do a first pass editorial in here. And the next step is rendering for me, which I'm sure you'll go through this plenty. But I'll usually have some render presets. So this render settings one, again, very kind of low settings. Again, for me, if there's a little bit of noise in the scene, it's fine. Like, I'm not passing a level of quality control, which again, when I go through the WildBrain stuff, very different story, right? It has to be very clean renders. There's an intense QC process and things like that. But as an indie creator, I'm like, there's a little bit of noise, looks like sparkles, it's fine. A kid's not gonna call that out. And if they do, great learning opportunity. So for me, kind of enough of, like, it feels kind of clean. I'll have some samples on my lights. In the post process, again, when I had those split up into like the real time and a light and a final, I'll kind of crank some settings up in there. So my lumen settings are a bit cleaner and things like that. And then when I was in 4, the ray tracing would be a bit cleaner that way too. So I'll try to get it clean. Obviously, if it's something super distracting on the character, like one of the characters has like a glitter dress, so usually below her chin will be super noisy, so I have to bump up the reflection samples and things like that. Like, I'll still try to get it clean, but I won't like do render after render after render trying to get a perfect one. So I'll render these out. Another thing, like Brian mentioned in the beginning, I did a kids book and I did render it all out of Unreal. So that was also another great way for like control rig and the mocap poses to just like, because it's just static, right? So you can have the poses, you can spend a little bit longer, do those at 4K render. I would kind of, that one I cared a lot more about getting the clean aliasing on the edges, because I was kind of doing an alpha and cutting it out and things like that. But that's another cool approach. Like, if you have your character in Engine, like, you can make animated content. But for me, like my children's books and all my lesson plans, I'll just take images out of here. I've done coloring pages where I'll make a toon shader and then put it on different characters and set props and make like my coloring worksheets that way, so they can like watch the video and then they actually have the thing that they can color, instead of like, putting on the iPad and tracing it or running it through Photoshop and doing all the lines and all that. I'm like, I'll just put a toon shader on it and call it a day. So again, like wherever, and like, again, like my skills and strengths are in Engine. So again, if I can avoid going to other DCCs, that's the best for me. But again, like if you wanted to, trace something and do your own process, you totally can. So from here, I'll render them out. I'll export the audio. Usually I mute the audio in the sequencer and I manually export it after, or else during the render, like I just hear myself on loop as it's rendering over and over, which is like, I don't want to hear that anymore. I know I can mute my computer, but I'm usually like doing other things too. So I usually mute that in the sequencer and export it separately. And then for me, I'll bring that into Premiere and just kind of edit it together, throw out some music and export it from there is kind of the last process. I don't really go, again, just because I'm trying to shrink the amount of time, very rarely am I going back and forth and like changing my cameras and doing that again. Like that last step in Engine of where I'm like kind of looking at all the shots together is kind of like my rough editorial pass, so I don't have to like re-render stuff. Given the renders are, 20 seconds a frame, max a minute a frame, right? Like they're so fast that if you need to change stuff, you can. But for me, I'm like, all right, have a Saturday. Like I need to get from the recording to, like, my goal is usually from recording to having the thing on YouTube has to be done Saturday, Sunday. like
Mhm.
in one weekend. And usually I can do like a 4-minute video. During the week, I'll kind of plan out like, okay, here's my scenes. I'm gonna need these characters, all that. And then just in the weekend, it's like record, render, everything on the, and then usually Sunday, it's like, okay, let me edit it together. And if there's any re-renders or fixes, then I'll do that. So
That's
really
crazy.
tight, short, trying to get stuff out.
Yeah, it wasn't too long ago that you could barely render a frame over a weekend. Now
Yeah.
you're doing whole shows. It's just nuts.
Yeah. Um, yeah, so that's again like kind of the indie creator, you have a lot more kind of freedom to try the new things. If it doesn't work, you know, you are the creative and you are the tech. So if you're having a technical problem, use it to change the camera angle, right? Like there's so many things that like when it's just you can make those choices right now. Like going and you're working with a big team where you have a director, an art director, you have department heads, all those people, you know, if you're having a tech problem, like, you know, say there's glass flickering to the side or something, so many times I'm like, can we just move the camera this way and just like not render the glass and call it a day? And, you know, but then that has to go to all the creatives. They have to make sure it doesn't affect the story point, all this kind of stuff. So it's like very different worlds, right? Like having a lot more control of the decisions, whereas usually for that, it's like, no, we need the glass. Now you're in engine, like doing all the technical troubleshooting. Is it this light? Is it the mesh? Is it effects in front of it? You know, you're going through that whole process, which is like really when you get into kind of the nuances of figuring out all the little magic toggles and console variables that fix everything.
Yeah.
But it's a very different process for sure.
Thank you so much for coming. This has been amazing, very informative, and we really appreciate you.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for having me. And if anyone, I mean, I could talk about this all the time, but if you want to add me on LinkedIn or ask any questions, I'm happy to answer anything that we didn't get to.
Friend her or ask for a friend request, and I'm sure she'll give you the thumbs up, and you can ask her anything she wants. So. All right. Well, we're going to switch over to that lovely graphic and we'll call it this recording a day. Thank you, Shazzy. Really
Cool.
appreciate it.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.